You see, 144 blunt and sharp force wounds later, she was dead.
On the 11th of July 1997, Gloria Gomez, she traveled from Miami to Fort Lauderdale. She went to comfort a friend who may have been suffering from terminal cancer. This friend was William Coday, who happened to be Gloria's ex-boyfriend a few months prior. William was a model employee, a mild-mannered 40-year-old librarian who completely lost control when his girlfriend left him. When he did not show up for work at the Broward County Library on July the 12th, 1997, his co-workers became concerned. Instead, the man who searched the apartment found someone else. When he opened the door, he saw Gloria, and her life was taken. The victim was alive for 143 of the 144 wounds the defendant dealt her. This seems it was a crime of passion, jealousy, rage, insecurity. To have a look at the depth of William's actions, here's the medical examiner explaining what she saw when she came across Gloria's body.
All right. Tell us what you saw.
Basically, there was the one bedroom in which there was the body on the floor, face up, slightly lying on the left side. The floor was covered in blood that had multiple smeared patterns in the blood. And the walls in the room, particularly the west wall and the north wall, as well as the east wall, had blood spatter patterns on them, concentrated towards the lower portion of the walls. There was blood spatter concentrated there. The door entering the room also had blood spatter on the outside of it. There are two closets in the in addition to the blood spatter and the floor and the victim, there were a couple of weapons also noted in the room.
What did you see?
Hammers and one knife.
So the crime scene in my mind goes something like this. As Gloria approaches William, William asks her, "Hey, please stay with me. Don't go. I love you. I want to be with you." Gloria in her head is thinking, "What the hell is wrong with you? Get away from me. I left you for a reason." William takes that very personally, and in a split second, adrenaline. He can't handle in his mind that she's saying, "No, what am I going to do without you? I love you. I want to be with you." Emotions, immaturity, insecurity, the full works. And in that moment, only she can make him feel better. The only way he can overcome what he's feeling in the moment is if she says to him, okay, yes, I'll be with you, let's make it work. But that's not how she felt. So what does he do? He gets the hammer, he gets the knife, he then starts attacking her, and with each blow, he's slowly ridding the anger he's feeling. 1 blow, 2 blow, 3 blow, 4 blow, and that's the reason why there's 80 to 140 different kind of blows, because that's how angry he was.
About the body itself.
The body itself, she was dressed in a lavender colored dress, sundress type with just the small skinny straps, sandals, bra and panties. She had a shoe on one foot, I believe it was the left foot, and she was covered in blood. And then I went on to determine the type of wounds she had.
All right. Tell us about your observation there at the scene as far as what you saw with respect to the wounds.
Okay. She had multiple injuries, basically to her head, her face, her torso, as well as her extremities, each extremity, including the arms and the legs and the hands. Of those wounds, she had wounds consistent with blunt impact injuries.
Tell us what you mean by blunt impact injuries.
Injuries that are produced by a blunt force impact, which can be one of or four of, in a category of 4. The first type of injury that can be received from blunt impact is an abrasion, which is the rubbing off of the superficial layers of the skin when an instrument or something impacts the skin. The second type of blunt impact is a bruise, and that is produced by crushing the small vessels in the skin as an impact force strikes the skin. And we see that in terms of hemorrhage, but the hemorrhage is the color of a bruise that we all see externally. The other injury is a laceration. When an impact force is great enough, it can split the skin.
Even with a blunt object?
Pardon?
Even with a blunt object?
Yes.
And by blunt, what do you mean with respect to blunt itself in your medical field? What type of object are we talking about?
Well, the blunt does not mean a particular type of object. It's just the impact force that is created. It can be a blunt object, or it can also be a fall on the ground. It's just a blunt force. Okay.
As compared to sharp?
Correct. Described at the scene, in addition, was that she had blood-tinged froth in her nose and her mouth.
Say that again, please.
Blood-tinged froth.
What do you mean by that?
Basically, she had foam in her nose and her mouth that's produced by a mixture of air and mucus, a little bit of fluid from the lungs, and some blood from the lungs in the presence of respiration.
Let's talk about your observations there at the scene. And if you were able to, based on your observations at the scene, reach some sort of parameter as to, or a parameter as to how long she may have been deceased when you saw her.
Basically, by the time I saw her, she was already very cold, stiff, and she had fixed lividity, which is the pooling of the blood in the dependent areas of the body.
And it seems to me William had not let go. So he's thinking in his head, how can I get her back? Let me make up a lie that I have this medical issue. She will then come and see me, and then I can try and get her back. See, back in 1978, William did the same to an ex-girlfriend in Germany. Her name was Lisa Hullinger, as she was found with similar wounds and hammer blows. Luckily for William at the time, his attorney gave an insanity defense. William was sentenced to prison for 3 years in Germany. He only served 15 months and then he was released. And I feel, with Gloria and Lisa back in Germany, William became obsessed with the women who accepted him. A further indication of this is this interview with one of Gloria's ex-boyfriend. Listen to this.
Maybe late February, we got together a couple of times for lunch. And in March, we started going out on a more regular basis for lunch, and sometimes we'd meet up for dinner.
March of 1997?
Correct.
How did the relationship continue with you and Gloria after March of 1997?
Well, we started getting a little bit more serious. At that point, I had broken off my relationship with the other person. And, we just started hanging out a lot more. Started going to movies together, started going out to dinner all the time. And it kept going that way until about May.
And what happened in May?
In May, then we went ahead and started talking about, more serious things, getting into a serious relationship with each other. And then in June, I actually asked her to move in.
Where were you living at the time?
I was renting from my parents.
In their home?
Correct.
And how would you describe your relationship at that time with Gloria? June of 1997.
I would say, I guess, in love.
And there it is, right there. If ever there was an image or a moment in this entire story that would define it, it's his face right here. This is why he did it. Look at him. He's hearing from her ex-boyfriend that she was wonderful, she was beautiful, that he loved her, she loved him. They went out for dinners and they had fun. They kissed, they made love. All of this is now ringing through his head and he is broken, he is shaken. And I'm not sympathizing with him, I'm not justifying it. I'm just seeing, I'm looking at him and I'm seeing right through him. He now feels like a victim. She did this to me. How did she do this to me? She didn't think of me. What about me? I loved her. I wanted her to be with me. He's only thinking about himself.
Do you ever have any plans to marry her before her death?
Yeah, well, right before I asked her to move in, when we were, things were getting more serious, I decided, that I wanted to go ahead and ask her how she felt about getting married. I proceeded to sit down and speak to my parents about the situation, what they thought about her, what they thought in general. And then I went ahead and asked her to marry me, and then she moved in.
When was the last time you saw Gloria alive?
I saw her on that Friday at about 11:30 in the morning.
Where did you see her?
Saw her at my house.
Where did she go?
She was coming to Fort Lauderdale.
Had she told you where she was planning to go that morning?
Yes, sir.
When did she tell you that?
She told me that the previous night, Thursday night.
Where did she tell you she was going?
When she was going up to Fort Lauderdale to visit a sick friend.
When she left that Friday morning, did you hear from her again?
No.
Did you try to contact her at all?
Yes, I did.
How?
I tried to page her.
When did you first begin to try to page her?
Probably at 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock when I got home that night.
How often did you try to page her?
I paged her many times. I couldn't tell you how many times I paged her.
Did she have any beepers? How many beepers did she have? We'll put it that
Well,
time.
I knew she had one that, that I paged her on. She might have had another one, laying around that wasn't working, but
Did you know she had one that was disconnected?
I think she had one laying around that wasn't working, yeah.
Did you continue to try to page her that evening?
Yes, I did.
How about the next day, which would be Saturday?
Yes, I did.
And when did you find out or learn of her whereabouts?
Well, when I got back to my house Saturday afternoon, there was a message. Someone had called.
You don't have to tell us what was said.
Okay, I just spoke to my dad and left a message for me to call.
Who was that person?
I think it was either Detective Curcio from Homicide or one of the other detectives.
Did you return the call?
Yes, I did.
And was that how you discovered her death?
Well, they wouldn't tell me anything on the phone, but when I called up and they
Well, I
answered,
wonder what was said.
I'm sorry.
Eventually, did you find out that she was dead as a result of
Correct.
the phone call? Were you asked in any way by the detectives to assist in the identification process to make sure?
Yes, they asked me for any birthmarks or something she might have on her.
Now, what I find interesting whenever it comes to these kind of court cases is sometimes when it's so blatantly obvious that in this case William did this, the defense will still try and create some kind of doubt. You're going to see the defense attorney now mention a few other ex-boyfriends, and he's going to try and paint the picture that Gloria wanted to marry him, wanted to marry the ex-boyfriend, and she had some feelings for William, essentially trying to say that Gloria played William and she kind of forced William's hand. I think it's a stupid narrative, but let's see how it plays out.
Mr. Laverty, were you aware that Gloria was dating Des Alsace when you met her in January of 1997?
No.
Were you aware that Bill wanted to marry Gloria prior to her death?
Yes.
Were you aware that Gloria was dating Bill when you first met her in January 97?
Yes.
Were you aware that Gloria had lost touch with Bill for a period of time right before she moved to Miami?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you were unaware that Gloria was living with Bill at some point in time around March or April of 1997?
Correct.
Was it your impression that Gloria thought it was strange that Bill had visited her family in Colombia?
Yes.
What was that question again?
Was it his impression that Gloria thought it was strange that Bill had visited her family in Colombia? Isn't it true that Gloria did indicate to you during the period in time you knew her from time to time that she was heading up to Fort Lauderdale to visit Bill Coday?
Answer that again? Ask me that again?
Okay. Were you aware that, didn't Gloria make you aware that at times when you knew her that she would be heading to Fort Lauderdale to visit Bill?
Yes.
Were you also aware that Gloria had some personal belongings at Bill's apartment in Fort Lauderdale that she needed to pick up?
Yes.
You were also aware that there was an immigration deadline of early August that related to Gloria's immigration status?
Sure.
All right, please just hand it to our court deputy. All right, I find the verdict to be correct as to form. You can publish the verdict, please.
In the Circuit Court of the 17th Judicial Circuit in and for Broward County, Florida, case number 9721145, CF10A, Judge Horowitz, State of Florida Plaintiff versus William Coday, Defendant. Verdict. We, the jury, finds as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in the indictment. So say we all, this 10th day of April, AD 2002 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Dennis Newman, foreperson.
William Coday was eventually sentenced to death, and he served some time at the Union Correctional Institution. In April 2008, he unfortunately committed suicide. The autopsy reports were not released, but according to his cellmates, he bled himself to death. He was 51 at the time, and my conclusion on this story is that it's just such a waste. This did not need to happen to Gloria, all because William just could not handle his own emotions. Imagine that. Imagine Gloria and her family, Colombian immigrants to America, trying to make it via the American dream. A man comes along by the name of William, who woos their daughter for a short space of time, but because of his life and everything that happened, and for whatever reason, he became this man-child. Gloria paid the price. Her family paid the price. And even though her family will probably never get over it, I hope by now they've gotten used to it. Thank you for watching.